With template players starting to form in our FPL teams, it's led to a lot of players being overlooked going into game week 1. And I've got 5 hidden gems here that I really think you need to consider for your game week 1 team. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you do drop a like. Aim for 200 on this video. If you haven't already, make sure you do smash that subscribe button. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up is going to be Crystal Palace's Daniel Munoz, who has been priced at 5.5 million, so a bit more expensive than last season, and currently only 8.7% owned in the game. Now, in the context of other players, we've got Frimpong, Cucurella, Nori, all 30% ownership and more. I think that is criminally overlooked at only 8.7% ownership. Remember, this is one of the best defenders in the game last year and really was one of those fun picks that all of us did enjoy owning, especially during a period with double game weeks. So we got to talk about the pros and of course the cons, because it isn't just all positivity about these players. There are reasons why they are being overlooked. We just got to understand whether they are justification or not as why they are being really overlooked. So first up, 4 goals, 5 assists last season for Daniel Munoz was fantastic. And I'm going to put up the stats here from last season. And these are general overview of stats. This isn't per 90 minutes. You can see Trent led the way for expected goal involvement at 9.25. Actually got 9 goal and assists, similar to Munoz. But of course, Trent has left the Premier League, so Munoz is the standout pick from last year. Got 9 goals and assists, had an expected goal involvement of 8.5, which is 1 more than that of Vardial at 7.5. Then we have Nori at 6.69, of course, a very popular pick, and then Pedro Porro at 6.24. So really from an underlying perspective and an output, Daniel Munoz was clearly one of the best defenders in the game, especially at the price that he was last season. I believe he was 5 million, so rightly so, he has jumped up. In terms of the fixtures, we actually have okay fixtures. Now, I understand why managers are slightly concerned in game week 1. They're playing away against Chelsea, who just won the Club World Cup. So on paper, that does actually appear quite difficult. But after that, Forest at home. Yes, Forest were fantastic last year, but they've lost Elanga. I'm not expecting an improved Forest team necessarily. Chris Wood, another year older. We'll see about that fixture. Villa away in game week 3. Yes, I understand it's difficult, but then Sunderland, West Ham, Liverpool in between, but then Everton and Bournemouth. I actually think if you take away game week 1, that's actually not a bad run of fixtures. And I would actually argue Palace are now about 3 games into their pre-season, and it has been the same old story. Eze scoring, Sarr scoring, Mateta, Munoz, the same culprits of what we saw last year. And they are actually going to come in up against a very undercooked Chelsea team who are only going to have 1, maybe 2 pre-season games in preparation for that fixture. So I would not be looking at a Chelsea game thinking that 1, Palace can't keep a clean sheet, and 2, Munoz can't get attacking returns. And the also thing I want to understand for managers is that he's a proven FPL player. Now, I'm going to put up here the touch heat maps of both Nori and Daniel Munoz, because, of course, Nori is the one that is getting a lot of traction right now. With the defensive contributions being introduced this year, centre-backs are all of the rage, but full-backs are still really, really exciting and have, rightly so, their own category where we have to invest into them. Nori looks like he's been the one to stand out for managers, but when we look at the touch heat maps here for both, Nori got into some incredible positions, but the exact same of that of Daniel Munoz. The big difference, of course, is that we know exactly what we're going to get from Daniel Munoz this year. He is going to do the exact same thing in this Crystal Palace team, unless something happens like a sale, which we will touch on in a minute. Nori, yes, he might replicate these sort of touches, numbers, but until we actually see it in that Man City team, I don't know if I necessarily think that he is any better than that of Daniel Munoz. Now, of course, a few problems. One, the tough game week 1 fixture that we've discussed, but I think that might actually be over-exaggerated. And the big problem here is going to be less likely for defensive contributions. Now, I'm going to put up the defensive contributions table for Crystal Palace assets. And it's kind of given me a bit of a headache, because Daniel Munoz is averaged 7.49 defensive contributions per 90, which is decent, but defenders need to hit 10, so he might hit them on the occasional game, but realistically, you are buying in for clean sheets and those big attacking returns. What you can see on the list is a few players that might actually emerge as incredible options. I didn't want to dedicate a whole section to them, but Lacroix, playing centre-back who also has got some decent underlying attacking numbers. He was one of the defenders that actually underperformed the most. Average 10 defensive contributions per game. So you are picking up a defender there that has the same clean sheet odds as Munoz, actually offers something offensively, and great for the defensive contributions. And the same can be applied for Chris Richards. 9 defensive contributions per 90. So again, he will be hitting those numbers at times. And only 4.5 million as well. So while I think Munoz is a standout Palace player, and I think you can definitely go there, I would also argue, if you're looking at that price thinking, nah, that is too much, I still would say to you, Richards and Lacroix need to be a consideration for you if you want to go for a bit more of a defensive contribution player. So all in all, massively overlooked. I think this is an incredible pick at 5.5 million and one that I am trying to squeeze into my team. It's just the price point where I understand managers are having the difficulty. So another defender that I think has been really overlooked going into game week 1 is going to be Nottingham Forest's Murillo. Has had a price hike, and a lot of people might actually look at that and think, why has he had a price hike to 5.5 million? But it's because, of course, the introduction of defensive contributions that we've touched on in previous videos. And that has led to his ownership being only 4% in the game, which I think is so damn low. And I actually think the Nottingham Forest defence in general is quite lowly owned. So let's talk about this right now. In terms of Murillo, what we have to understand is that this guy is an absolute defensive contribution monster. I'm going to put up the numbers here for Nottingham Forest defenders in general. And you can see in the total column, this guy averaged 10.69 defensive contributions per 90 minutes. You can see the clearances is where he really got them at 6.84. Just tip, that's where you should be looking for the majority of your defensive contributions when you are actually looking for these types of players. But an absolute monster. Now, of course, things might change at Forest where he doesn't rack up these sort of things. But while the manager is in charge, I don't see him changing necessarily his tactics defensively. He's always going to be a manager that is going to be a bit more low block and look to hit teams on the counter. Now, of course, the absence of Elanga being sold off might change things slightly, but I don't think enough for him suddenly to have in defensive contributions. So that makes him so much more easier to predict points each and every week. Whereas if you invest in an attacking defender, that could happen in any single game. I think we are going to see regular 2-pointers from Murillo on top of the clean sheets that we're anticipating, and of course the 2 points for playing 90 minutes, because this is a 90-minute guaranteed player. The fixtures, I think, are pretty decent. Brentford at home, with all the worries and problems that they have, I think is a nice opening fixture in a league which is just damn right competitive this year. Then Crystal Palace away, don't get me wrong, that is a tough game. But then West Ham at home, Arsenal away, yes, but then Burnley and Sunderland, I think those opening 6 fixtures, considering the league is just so competitive now, is probably as good as you are really going to get from a team that we saw last season can do the business. So I really do like Murillo for a fixture perspective. And we need to remember, people are getting slightly obsessed with the defensive contributions and skewing their mindset a little bit. What we do need to note is that bonus points are still huge, and this guy is a monster. 18 bonus points as a defender is an absolute joke, the best in the league. And I think he's going to continue that sort of thing going into this season. So we have someone that's only improving because of the defensive contributions. Fixtures are great on bonus points. I don't really see too much wrong with him. Now, the problem is, of course, I think people look at goal threat. So Milenkovic is currently the most owned Forest defender because, of course, 5 goals naturally is going to be tempting for people at the same price as Murillo. And Neco Williams, playing as a wing-back at times, naturally a bit more of an attractive option. But what I showed you on the defensive contributions is that those two are considerably less than Murillo when it comes to that. So you have to decide what you want. Goal threat, or do you want consistency with defensive contributions? And as a team, what's going to happen with the Europa League? We don't really know what's happening right now with Palace and what the knock-on effect will have, but eventually there is going to be a downturn in Forest. I'm certain of it. It's just so consistent. Whatever teams with small squads play in Europa League, find it very difficult to balance the Premier League. And I think that will happen with Forest, but we don't have to worry about that really in the opening 6 game weeks. And then after that, wildcards might be used. So please do consider a Forest defender. I think Murillo is fantastic and being massively overlooked. So moving into the midfielders, and this one I am really shocked at. And that is going to be Cody Gakpo, only 2% owned in the game. That's right. 2% owned for a Liverpool midfielder who got 15 goal involvements last year. So let's talk about the pros and why maybe managers are literally avoiding him. So the first thing we need to understand is that he was a forward in the game last year and he's been reclassified to a midfielder, which is only a great thing. It means he gets an additional point for a goal and, of course, for a clean sheet. So whatever points he scored last year, they would have been much more if he was just simply a midfielder like he is this season. So that is a huge plus. The second great thing going for him is that we have the confirmation that Luis Diaz has been sold to Bayern Munich. So whereas last year it very much was Gakpo or Diaz on that left-hand side, we have now lost someone who was a direct competition for Gakpo. So Luis Diaz, no more. Gakpo really has that left-hand spot to himself, and it's very much a case now of what is going to happen in the rest of the transfer window, which we will touch on in a minute. The other thing is that the 1 million cheaper price point to that of Florian Wirtz means you can invest elsewhere in your squad. Lots of managers have seen Florian Wirtz, have really pulled the trigger and said to themselves, this is the guy to own at 8.5 million and have gone there. And while I do believe an 8.5 million price point is really important for your sides because it allows you to pivot to other players around that price point, I also do think Gakpo, when he is 1 million cheaper, arguably safer for minutes, some would argue, and maybe even more of a goal threat. And someone like Florian Wirtz, who brings people into the game with his creativity, is only going to enhance Gakpo as an FPL option from a goal scoring perspective. Gakpo very much is a finisher in this team, and we have seen him get into much more central areas. And if the anticipation is Kerkez to operate on the left-hand side and hog the touchline, it means that Gakpo can get into these goal-scoring opportunities, which really is where Slot wants him. So I just think we're going to see a better version of Cody Gakpo. Now, we can't really make the argument about fixtures here because people are buying Liverpool assets regardless, whether it be Frimpong, Sarr, Wirtz, Ekitike. We know game week 2 and 3 are difficult, but it hasn't stopped them paying $1 million more for Florian Wirtz. So I beg the question, if there is a potential for a wildcard in the opening weeks that maybe you're planning, maybe save yourself 1 million less and go for Cody Gakpo at a much cheaper price and a much lower ownership. Now, of course, a few problems. If Isak does actually get confirmed, then we're going to see a situation where maybe Ekitike has always been the plan to go on the left-hand side. Kerkez basically plays a high left winger at times, and Ekitike basically plays as a second forward alongside Alexander Isak. If that happens, then I would agree Cody Gakpo probably does become a bit of a difficult one to predict for minutes going forward, because Ekitike, there's no way he's getting 20 minutes each and every game. So then I would say this is an avoid. So it can very quickly change. And I also get it. It's a tricky price point, 7.5 million. If everybody's doing Salah, Palmer, and we all agree 8.5 is a price point very hard to ignore, you can't really go then 7.5 alongside that unless you are saving money in the forward line. But if you're of the opinion, that Florian Wirtz might take a few games to actually get up and running, Gakpo's a really cheap way into that forward line, especially if they do not sign Alexander Isak. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. If I can wrap my head around not owning Marmoush or Florian Wirtz, then I'm going to come down to Gakpo at 7.5 and own him in my Game Week 1 team. Another midfielder that is only 2% owned in the game and had a fantastic season last year is going to be Crystal Palace's Ismaila Sarr. 6.5 million, and as I said, 2% owned. This is a guy who was fantastic for our teams last season. Yes, some of us had some bad experiences where he was a little bit frustrating at times, but regardless, 2% owned for a guy who was incredible at times last year, I believe is being massively overlooked by managers. So let's talk about it. First and foremost, let's just look at the fixtures that Crystal Palace have, because of course we've looked at them for Daniel Munoz, looking at it from a clean sheet sort of perspective while he is kind of an attacker. Let's just look at these solely from an attacker's perspective. Now, as I said, I personally don't think Chelsea will be watertight defensively, especially in the opening game weeks. I think Chelsea is still great. It's a Chelsea fan, remember, but I think Chelsea will be there to be got at in that opening game week. I think that's going to be a really, really tough game for them. So I would not be surprised at all if Eze, Sarr, Mateta were to score in a game that maybe was even something like 2-2 would be my prediction. Forest at home, I think's okay. Not a horrendous fixture at all. Then Aston Villa away, one of those very difficult to predict, but I do think Palace have the players to hit Villa in transitions 100%. And then afterwards, you just have to target the relegated teams until we know otherwise. So Sunderland, great for game week 4. West Ham in game week 5, I mean, that's fine. Liverpool, I think they definitely can be got at. We've seen it with Palace, and then Everton and Bournemouth. So I think long-term, attacking-wise, great fixtures. And we've got to remind ourselves, 8 goals, 7 assists last season. So 15 goal involvements. And he actually underperformed his numbers. 17.46 expected goal involvements. We saw at times either players be wasteful with the opportunities he presented them, or just him in general. I would still say he's quite a raw player. Not a natural finisher. Very clinical at times when he gets into certain positions, but I still think Sarr is a player that will frustrate you. So just remember that, because there was a lot of pain last season alongside some good times. And as we discussed, good long-term fixtures. A few problems. The Eze transfer saga is an issue when we're looking to invest in Palace offensively, because I think Eze is so important to them. He kind of was what Elise was. We lost Elise, but managed to transition Sarr into the team and do a very different job, but an effective job. I think Eze can't be replicated unless there is some backup plan in the transfer window where they pick someone up. I think this will be hugely negative for Palace as a team, defensively, offensively. I think we'll be looking to almost avoid attacking options from Palace if Eze was to leave. So this will be a decision that we need to make very close to game week 1. But if Eze locks in his time, I just think this front three at Palace will score goals in fixtures regardless. We saw it last year. The other thing we need to note is the 6.5 million price bracket is very, very competitive this season, because with defensive contributions, we got to include that. I'm going to put a list up here of the players priced 6.5. If it's not on your screens, it's because I couldn't fit it on the video, so I do apologise. I try to get them all on there. I believe Kulusevski's the only one missing out because he's injured and I couldn't bother to keep him in. So just running through a few people, because historically Declan Rice would not be a consideration, but we saw him get a lot of assists from corners, and of course defensive contributions has been involved in the game. So we might see Rice actually better value. Matoma, I don't think that's even better. Enzo, I still think is slightly overhyped as a pick. Then we got Ndai, who could be on penalties for Everton. Again, a very competitive player against Sarr, an element that Sarr doesn't necessarily have with him as an asset. Iwobi, again, doesn't excite me. McAllister and Szoboszlai, not picks. Cherki, a huge risk. Rodri could be fantastic, but we're kind of treading carefully with Rodri. Ahmad could be sensational value, but we just need to see it as a right wing back. The big one is at the bottom of the list, and that is going to be Kudus. This guy is the one that is dominating the 6.5 million price bracket. And for a player who has been very underwhelming from an attacking perspective in terms of output for many seasons now, I'm a huge Kudus fan. Unbelievable player, incredibly hard to displace the ball from. But from a goal scorer and finishing perspective, I think he causes a lot of chaos. I think he'll create a lot of chances. But I don't look at him and think he's the finished product when it comes to actually delivering FPL points. And I think that the disparity between Kudus' ownership, which is like 25% owned, a new player coming to a new team, well, a new team, not a new player, compared to Sarr, who is proven in a Palace team that is well functional, is crazy. So I think you guys need to consider Sarr more. He's starting to creep into a few of my drafts as opposed to Kudus. The only problem is Kudus' fixtures are much better in the opening 3, and that's why I understand why managers want to go there. But just remember the players that have done it last season and probably will do it in these opening weeks. And finally, we have got the forward that everybody knows is being overlooked, but nobody's really doing much about it from an ownership perspective, and that is going to be Ollie Watkins. Now, I want to give an honourable mention to Evan Nielsen, but I just want to see a little bit more from Bournemouth as a team, because the 4-1 loss to Man United slightly spooked me. I just need to see whether they are actually a team we want to invest in. So Villa is a team that I'm still very, very confident about investing, and that is why I still think he's being criminally, and I've used that a lot, overlooked. So 9 million, 9% owned. Comparing that to the other forwards right now, we've got Haaland at the top bracket at 14. We got Isak at 10.5, an avoid right now until we know what's happening with his future. Then we have, of course, got Watkins and Gyökeres at 9. We got 8.5 for the likes of Ekitike, and we got Bowen at 8. And then we got the group of 7.5s like Dominic Solanke, João Pedro, Chris Wood. So I think we're in a position right now where the 9 million price bracket has become very important to teams. And I predict that closer we get to the deadline, managers are going to look at Isak's situation, look at Gyökeres for game week 2, look at Watkins in general, and say to themselves, if I've got 7.5 as my most expensive forward, how am I getting up if one of these suddenly becomes irresistible and we need to own? That's my early prediction. I just think Watkins resolves all of your issues. So 16 goals last year, 8 assists is just ridiculous for a player. We have to remember, had a very indifferent season. He was competing with minutes with John Duran. At one moment, John Duran was the number 1 forward. So Watkins' minutes were very, very sporadic. Either starting and playing 60 or coming on as a sub and playing 30. So the fact he put up those numbers is fantastic, of course, alongside a European campaign. So great numbers. And we need to know going into the season, no Asensio, no Rashford, no John Duran. Now, normally, I would say to you, this is a problem. Look at Brentford. Mbeumo's gone, Norgard's gone, possibly Visser. That as a team is a problem. I know Villa have lost some key players, some would say, but I just think this team is so built around Watkins and Rodgers that this is going to be such an obvious situation, similar to Brentford last year. Mbeumo assist, Visser goal, Visser assist, Mbeumo goal. I think this is going to happen again this season with Villa. Rodgers assist, Watkins goal, Watkins assist, Rodgers goal. There's no one really else standing out in that Villa team who is going to contribute in the final third. So it's all going to feed through Watkins. It's already started. In the 2 preseason games that Villa have, it was a goal for Rodgers, goal for Watkins. Have a guess. The second game, goal for Rodgers, goal for Watkins. Rinse, repeat. And look at these fixtures. Newcastle at home could become a great fixture. There's a lot of uncertainty right now at the club. Brentford, with all their problems, could be great. We're just anticipating that. Palace in game week 3, I think, is fine. Everton, Sunderland, Fulham, Burnley, even Spurs. I think when we're looking to invest in players with guaranteed game time, possibly on penalties, I just think Watkins ticks all the boxes. And I will be astonished if his ownership isn't 20% by the time we get to game week 1. I just can't believe he's been this overlooked. Now, in terms of the problems, it's a competitive price point. Already, Gyökeres has been announced and he is more owned than Watkins. It's just crazy. Kai Havertz is still in that Arsenal team. There's nobody in that Villa team. And also, it's a quiet transfer window for Villa. So even though I don't think Asensio or leaving is a problem, I also look at my team and think, oh, they could be 1 or 2 injuries away from actually really decreasing as a team in general. And even though Watkins is the talisman, if a team's bad, then you don't really want to invest in them. So that is my only concerns. Otherwise, if we keep seeing what we're seeing in pre-season, I just think Watkins is such a fantastic pick, and he will be in a lot of teams I'm predicting come game week 1. But as of right now, with less than 2 weeks till the deadline, I ain't seeing it change as we speak. So let me know your thoughts on Watkins. I am very, very bullish on him as a pick. Yes, guys, okay, that's going to wrap up today's video looking at the 5 overlooked hidden gems in the game. I hope it provided some value. I think these players are going to actually start to gain some traction the closer we get to the deadline, because these are proven players who we know can do the business. So that is my early prediction. Let me know in the comment section, do you agree? Are there other players that you think are hidden gems that are being completely flown under the radar? Let me know in the comment section. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please do consider dropping a like and of course hitting that subscribe button. It always helps the channel. Have an amazing day. Take care and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.